Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 36th California Small Farm Conference. My name is Guido Lois. I'm a Communications and Events Manager with CAF, which stands for Community Alliance with Family Farmers. And I'm so excited to be here today with Karen, Josefina, and Justina for this workshop / panel that we're putting together about Latina women in the food system. And I think that's a distinction that we came up with on our last meeting when we were preparing this, that I think it's meaningful because we're trying to think about new ways of being a leader in the world and how will that impact our food system, right? As a whole, we're thinking about systems and things that maybe go beyond practices and more specific things. I'm not going to be talking as much today, but I did want to share a bit of my inspiration and the reason why I'm so happy that we're here. Because, yeah, we were just reflecting before we started on the conversation that we had and how nourishing it was. And I feel like it's coming full circle to me from this thought I had during the pandemic when I was farming in Northern California and seeing everything play out kind of like from the outside. You know, I left LA where I live and went into the countryside, and I was observing what was happening, and it became evident to me that we need to keep developing new ways of seeing the world. And at that time, like it became clear to me that that the role that women play in human societies as a whole. Now we're talking about the food system, right? But in human societies as a whole it's becoming so much more prevalent and so much more necessary. You know, that's what came to me as a white male, is that this is something that we need to understand. It's not just like, oh, I'm being nice to women. You know, it's like, no, there's a value here that if I don't seize, I am not evolving, right? Yeah, so that was a little bit of the reason why, yeah, when I joined CAF and I learned about the conference, I was like, we need to do this, especially after meeting Josefina, too, which works for CAF as well. And yeah, I'm gonna let everyone introduce themselves, but I want to express my gratitude to all of these amazing speakers. Karen and I have been friends since I came to the States and has been an angel in my life since then. With Josefina, we're developing a really nice professional relationship and friendship. We have a lot of fun. She started she's probably the reason why I work for CAF, because she started the Latino cohort in the organization. And Justina, we just met, but she's a really, really, really nice person. So I'm gonna let you all introduce yourselves, and yeah, we'll be here to help with the chat. Just know that I forgot my regular introduction for the attendees, that this meeting is being recorded. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature that you can find in the bottom of your screen. The chat is more for comments, but if you put your questions in the Q&A, we have a higher chance that we'll see them and that I don't have to scroll back, but it will still be looking at it. And lastly, I wanted to thank our sponsors for making this conference possible. All right, that's all about me. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll give the mic to Justina, I guess, who's going to introduce herself.
Hello, good morning. I'm Justina. I run Araceli Farms, which I started in 2017. I am in the Solano County area on Patwin land, and super excited to be here. If there's any questions, anyone wants to connect, please feel free to drop any info in the chat, besides questions, which go in the Q&A box. Who's next?
Awesome. I'm Karen Rodriguez. I'm with Kiss the Ground, a nonprofit organization advocating for soil health and regenerative agriculture. I love soil. I'm really grateful for life every day, so that's why I do this work. And that's all I'll share right now.
Hi, my name is Josefina Lara Chavez. I am a senior manager at Community Alliance of Family Farmers, which is CAF, known as CAF. And I am currently based in Oakland, shifting to the Central Coast once again. I am originally from Mexico and come from a farming background and have a background in international relations and development. And farming, my passion is this, creating space for Latinos and Latinas in farming. Um, Not necessarily creating space, but being seen and acknowledged for our contributions. Thank you, Guido, for setting up this panel. Karen, Justina, lovely to meet you. And so we're shifting on. We're shifting on to, I guess, starting the panel. And we're going to be talking a little bit about, we're going to be starting off with coming home. So one of the themes that arise from the pre-planning of this panel is all of us really resonated with the idea of coming home. And home meant so many different things to all of us. For me, it was coming to realization that for a very long time, the Latinas in my life, those that wanted a better life for themselves, those that strive to be themselves in a way, ended up bearing the brunt of taking on the struggle, so much so that they abandoned themselves. We abandon ourselves as women, and we navigate the world in silence, which is really awful, right? And I meeting so many other women that are striving to reconnect with themselves, and in that meaning in our bodies, with our personalities, with our hearts, with our souls. For many of us, like Karen, as like I'll pass the conversation to her, because for some of us it's meant going back to our roots. For me, it's been connecting with my body and connecting with myself, and I just wanted to offer that, to have everyone here today really think about what coming home for us is and how important it is in a society that pushes us to be on the grind, and in seek of whatever vague success we feel it is, and how disempowering that actually is, and how it strips us of our humanity. Yeah, Christine, Karen, if you want to share a little bit.
Yeah, I'll share. It makes me think of like, I think most of the panel can relate to this, but when mom's like making the tortillas, and then you're like, but mom, are you ever gonna sit down to eat? Like, are you gonna eat? And it's always that place of like, women, you know, I'm only generalizing because this is a conference about women, but as a woman, I can speak for myself. I know that nesting and making a home cozy is a very natural thing. It's a very like, do we have all the things we need? Do we have band-aids? Do we have, like we're always thinking about what the household or the home is going to need. That can also translate to our body. It can also translate to the farm. It can also translate to any space that we're in, because we're caretakers by nature. So we're consistently looking for the whole. I think for me, in the story that you were talking about and through starting to thread, is that I always had that sense of caring for others, to the detriment of myself. I definitely started to take care of, I started to work on a world problem before I knew how to like feed myself really well. And that, I think that's part of being a woman. Sometimes I think it's part of our culture, something that we're taught. And what I had to learn as the last few years really you know, just to me got a little heavier in terms of how much information we have and what we're looking at and what's really the root of these problems, I started to really take on the work of the micro to mirror the macro. So what does that look like for me? And for me, I came to this country when I was 1 year old. I grew up here, and the American dream and living as an American was championed to me by everyone around me. And there were moments that it felt like I was being asked to be a different race. And I couldn't be any more. I couldn't be any more Americanized and any more of this like way. Even the way that I speak, you know, I don't have an accent. So there came a point where I had to really look inside and say, okay, well, what is home? What does that mean? And what does it mean to really, if I'm starting a garden or a farm right now, what's in this soil? And I got to spend time with the Mapuche tribe. A few years ago, I went to one of the COPs that was supposed to be in Chile, but it got moved to Spain. And I got to spend time with the Mapuche tribe, which is a really southern tribe. And one of the grandmothers said, when you leave the land that you were born on, there's a tendency to get really lost. And that just stuck with me. And so I started to spend more time in Guatemala, which is where I was born. And I now spend a lot more time here. And yeah, it's been so healing to just reconnect with the land that I was born on. It gives me a perspective of if I'm personally to regenerate my being, this is exactly where I need to do it, you know. So that's sort of the lines of what the topic was about for us.
Thank you, Karen. Justina, I'd want to know what home means to you.
Yeah, I would love to touch on that and then kind of go into that, the soil and the herbalism and the agroecology, because it all kind of ties together, and which is why I love chatting with you guys. Like every time we talk, it's just magic. And there's so many points, and I hope that I can do it justice by bringing it together. But home to me has been, it's so funny because this has been such a topic that's been on my mind lately because I moved around a ton growing up. I actually finished up high school in London, England, and lived in Brazil before that, and Japan. And so I've been all over. Lived in Chicago, lived in a bunch of different places. And so California was definitely always home base, but it was never like I've never had the upbringing of like childhood friends and neighbors and stuff like that, like here and there. But because I moved around so much, that sense of home was always kind of where I was in the moment. And I've been put for, you know, a couple years now with the farm and everything. I've been kind of central to Sacramento or Solano, you know, so but lately I've just been having these experiences where I have these moments of stillness in different parts of California, and I just am like so in love with California and its beauty and the land. And like I remember being in Guerneville and it was on my birthday and I'm in a hot tub and I'm just looking around me and I was just like, this isn't like to be amongst such beauty is just we need to like preserve it and take care of it and reciprocate that love that we're given every single day with just the beauty that's here. And I had the same feeling yesterday. I was just kind of walking around the farm and getting creative and trying to think about placements of some plantings and things like that. And just I had to stop because I was just in awe of like the mountains and the cloud, everything. And so home to me, I think feels uh, it's really being grounded within myself to be able to notice these things. I think that's what home feels like to me. Being in touch with that part of myself that can notice and isn't in that hustle and that grind and that to-do list. And it's being able to really appreciate all the little nuances that happen around us all the time, all the beauty that's just here. But we're so busy. But I do want to kind of touch base on you were talking about Josefina. Um, what was it, the restoration and kind of this cultural practice of always giving as women, especially Latina women. You know, I see my mom, my grandma, same thing, Karen. Like when you brought that up about serving everyone, my grandma never sat down with us. My mom hardly ever sits down with us. And it's really interesting that in creating my business, I started a lavender farm in 2017, and over the years, it has definitely shifted. But someone pointed out to me, kind of in this midway point, I was trying to figure out what is my business? What am I trying to say? How does everything I do kind of come together? How can I succinctly tell people about what we do? And the resounding kind of information that came from that feedback was you create spaces to restore people. And someone pointed out I was in like a class that kind of helped me pull out these kind of marketing things, right? But another Latina in the class was like, it's a love note to your family, to your moms, to the women in your family, that you wish they could have spaces like this, that you wish that they could take the time to just sit and be themselves and just enjoy. And so it's really interesting because I'll kind of talk about the journey of the farm, and how it kind of brought me to this conclusion. So again, started lavender in 2017, and my understanding of what success was in farming was just completely different than what it is now. I'm surrounded by conventional farms. So we're talking almonds, walnuts, alfalfa, tomatoes, corn, all around us. And so I'm sure you guys know that's always really orderly. It's really pristine. It's very in order. And it's very cyclical. If there's nothing planted, then the land is fallow. There's not a single weed typically growing. And so for me, I was so focused on the aesthetics of the farm initially. And through the years, obviously, I realized like that's not the most doable thing. And it's also not in alignment with what success looks like to me. I think I was trying to model all of these different what's it called, values that weren't mine. I don't, why do I value something looking so aesthetic and perfect? Because that's not what plants are. That's not what nature is. That's not how we all work together. And so over the years, I would say in like 2021, 2022, I started to, I'm very interested in like herbalism, and I started to get very connected with it. I started taking workshops and lessons, and I would go along the American River with one of my friends who teaches herbalism, and she would point out native plants and how we can use them and how we can harvest them. And it was beautiful. I felt myself like ignite again and get really, really excited about this. And so slowly over the last couple of years, I've been diving deeper into native plants. And I started to learn from someone who is indigenous down south who does like webinars and Zooms and stuff. And so with that, I started to really try and figure out what success looks like and how I can bring restoration into this picture of farming. Because to me, success at this point is just so different than what it meant to me a couple years ago. And I took out 2 acres of lavender, and I'm planting different native plants all around the farm. And so there's this balance of, we get so much from our land in so many different ways. And a lot of the time with farming, it's really hard because I think all of us we're so passionate about plants and farms and soil, but there is always a dollar sign that comes in connection to this, right? There's always a dollar sign. And I think a lot of us wish there wasn't. And it's hard. How do you balance making a living off of something that you love, but also honoring the land that gives us so, so, so much? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I am playing around with it. And the place that I'm at right now in my business is we still have the lavender, we still have our different avenues of revenue, but I am playing around with this idea of like, okay, I'm restoring these 2 acres with no plan for it whatsoever. I have no plan. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'm allowing myself to get creative, and I'm allowing myself to kind of have fun with it. And hopefully, through restoring the land and sharing that journey with people, sharing these plants with people, we can also learn how to like restore ourselves. And I love, Karen, what you said. I wrote it down, the micro to mirror the macro. Like, I'm going to be saying that to myself every day now, because that is, I think, exactly what I'm trying to do here, is like create this own little world of what I would like to see and hope that people can learn from it. Yeah, I don't know.
If I could add to what you're speaking to, is like, you know, when you talked about the dollar sign versus the plenitude of the land, right? Like, there's part of this sort of regeneration of where we're at today. Number one is staying in the conversation. Number two is a lot of bridging and weaving. Like, there's a lot of, like, think about when you make a basket, if you use different types of grasses, some are more bendy, some are not, some are softer, some are harder. So if you think about weaving a basket so that it's reinforced, it doesn't mean you have to do it all one type of grass. You could do it lots of types of grasses, but you just have to be smart about what parts are the handle, what parts of the are the outside. And I think that that's what I see a lot of, especially, like I said, coming from one world to another world and going, okay, I am of 2 worlds, and how do I weave this story? Because, you know, we're not like our parents, we're not like our grandparents, we have different access, we have different points of view, we have more information. So I think that part of that, this story, is just that everything you shared about like navigating, right? And so as I learn more about my own indigeneity, the more I see that people are better in the unknown. Say like on a farm in Guatemala, they don't go there knowing everything or having a plan. They show up, they listen, they pay attention, and then they go, okay, well, why don't we try this, or why don't we try that? We are a lot more terrible at that, because we think we need to come in knowing everything, or if we don't, we feel inferior or and disempowered. So I think part of what you talked about is what stands out to me is just remembering that it you know, when you say I don't know what the answer is, well, you're in the conversation, and that is what you're going to get to the answer, you know. So I just wanted to share that as well.
I love that.
Yeah, Karen,
Awesome.
speaking of that, speaking to paying attention. So all of this, what I've been thinking about this entire week was a few years ago. I mean, it's been like 10, but I like don't want to say that because it reminds me that time is my birthday's coming up. 10 years ago, I took a trip from San Salvador to Mexico City. I was backpacking with my little sister, and during my trip, we stayed in a little village via our friend. We stayed in a little village in El Salvador, and we stayed with this family. And it was a mom and a daughter, and the mom and the daughter, the daughter, they were every single sort of Latina archetype that I've known my entire life. Both of them were up from 5 a.m. and wouldn't be home until 10 p.m. and then on to repeat. The daughter, Anna, was this motivated, I'm gonna do it all. She was boundless. She was boundless, like with what she did. She was a student, I think. She was a chef. She was going to school for chef. She had her job, and she had started a bakery slash pupuseria from her house with her mom. They were busy all day, right? And I would sit down and try to talk to her about like just like, you know, just hanging out, like learning about El Salvador through her eyes. And on the very last day that I was there, she had stopped me. We were just talking about life. We were gonna catch a bus or something, and she said, "You know, Josefina, you got to do it for all of us. Lo tienes que hacer por todas, right? You got to do it for all of us. You got to continue traveling." That's what I interpreted, right? You got to continue traveling. You know, she's like, I wish I could go to Europe. I wish I could go and study, right? I wish I could do all those things. And no matter how much that want was there was only that boundless that she had was so limited because of her context at the time. By the way, she's doing great. Last time I heard, she did end up going to Europe. And I think she got a scholarship and everything. But all to say is I carried those words for the 10 years. Everywhere I would go, I would feel Ana in my head. Like, I gotta do it all, right? I gotta travel. I've gotta learn. I gotta learn a new language. I gotta do all these things, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, this long list of items alongside, I gotta care for my community. I gotta do all I can to ensure that in whatever I'm doing, folks are being included. That was really important to me. Folks are being included. Folks are being taken care of. All of the struggle mentality that you could possibly think of, right? As that we carry as women. With that, something that we don't talk about often is the backlash of that, right? Of being a very different archetype of Latina woman, living in a society that expects you to be subservient to their definition of who you are. And everything outside of that is either tokenized or you're scrutinized because you refuse to accept white supremacy and the women way of what they define you being, right? And there is no like, there's definitely a certain degree of you having a tribe, but there definitely you usually face backlash. All to say I was withholding that, right? And I always felt like I've got to carry this burden. I got to do what I can. I got to And it isn't until recently that actually I'm like, what if she meant, I don't know what she meant, to be honest, but to me, I started to interpret it differently. And I'm like, what if you got to do it for all of us means, what if you rest? What if you take time off? What if you stay in? What if you enjoy what you have? What if you treat yourself? What if you buy that perfume? What if you take a walk? What if you live a life where the center of your life is not struggle, but nourishment? What if you approach your work in feeling it with care for other people and you imagine a life for the people you serve? For me, it's for farmers. What if you imagine a life for them where things are made easier for them, where they feel cared for, where they have a place where they can talk, where they have a place where they feel seen, where they have a place where they can show up and the conversation is not about how awful life has been or how unjust it's been or who we have to fight today. Like, what if it's about like, ¿Cómo te va en la fiesta? How was the party? Or like, how is your family? Good, let's make a meal together. And that's what I've been really incorporating into my work. You know, when I hang out with farmers, I make mole, I chill with their kids. I ask them to teach me about the other things they do. Some of them play music, some of them write poetry. I don't focus on the struggle anymore. I'm just so sick and tired of our whole identity being about struggle and needing validation from a white supremacist culture that rejects us. And I don't hate myself, and I don't hate my community, and I know that our communities are different and imperfect, but I love the way we do things. I love that we can make things out of nothing, especially women. Women can make things out of nothing. A meal out of beans and rice and a potato or a plantain, like a salsa out of the tomate and a cebolla. I love that we are resourceful and artistic and poetic. And I think that we should allow ourselves the opportunity to indulge in that rather than always focusing and spending our time discussing the struggle of our life and our existence.
No.
Yeah, that's all I want
Yeah,
to.
no, and it's empowerment work, right? It's all empowerment work. It's how can we empower ourselves? Like, I know, just like you said when you talked about the backlash, like, I don't come from a society where I'm empowered to be, I am a short, round, brown woman. Like, I lived in LA for a long time. Like, I'm not empowered by my government. I'm not empowered by my peers. I'm not like, if I don't empower myself, there is no forward movement. And I feel like we're in a time where if we all don't learn how to empower ourselves, that's where we fall the shortest on our capacity and capability. Like, we are such powerful beings. We have so much access to literally the essence that nature is made from. We are made from the same thing. Like, have you ever seen a pregnant woman? Like, it's like a tree, it's like a flower, like she's making life. And so if we don't empower ourselves to sit in that, and just like you said, stop looking at the struggle, but rather walk, eat, laugh, like, really empower that the joy in that part of life, that's where we tend to get really limited in our being, I think.
And that's where we end up, right? So many of us, right? And so I'm like super, when I see women like Justina and other amazing women that have chosen to do and live out their spiritual inclination rather than centering a struggle. They center their creativity, they center their being, and it's so rare, and I constantly feel very protective over that. I feel like folks like Justina, folks that are in our community of women that are creating a better life a different way, that are actually living their full realizations of who they are, and not basing it on struggle. We need to protect and we need to celebrate.
There's something that comes up for me there. Well, you said Josefina was so beautiful. I mean, like, people started commenting. I don't know. I feel like you got so inspired. Thank you. And what was coming up for me is when you do that, that's a service to everyone, right? When you can really embody that feeling, it's not just that you're indulging yourself in you being a woman, but that's like almost like a systemic service, right? It's like you're changing the narrative in the way that you are being. And I think that's important to understand, so it doesn't create separation, right? It's not like, oh, there are the women doing their thing, and I think it's also important because it speaks about this ability, like Karen was saying in the beginning, to create a home can also translate in our society as how do we create a home for everyone. It's like a macro level from that micro, right? It was something about making everyone feel like they belong, right? That we have been talking about with Justina, or in your work, I think you touched briefly on this, Josefina, about how do you build a coalition and how do you make it whole, in the sense that is, of course, there's this the struggles are part of people's lives, but how do you make it happen? How do you articulate it, and how do you get people to work together from different with a different perspective, if you will? Yeah.
Yeah, are you asking me how do you get people to work together?
Yeah, it was just a comment. It was like I was reflecting on what you were saying, and I feel like it touches, yeah, and on your work, um, yeah, that you do with CAF and in general.
Yeah, no, you know, I've been fortunate, but I've also really worked very hard to always somehow, some way, be myself. And in that authenticity, I've been able, that part of my authenticity is to travel and to get to know people and to listen. And what I've come to know, right? And even in our relationship that we shortly have, right, Guido? It's about when I talk to you, I talk to you. I want to get to know you. I want to get to know about you. What makes you laugh, what makes you smile, about your family, about your upbringing, about what you like, you know, martial arts. It's about the human you, because you are a person. Right? Your authenticity, it matters to me. It matters that you feel safe in when we're together talking, right? And I'm just sort of mirroring how I build relationships with farmers, right? They're whole beings, right? They're farmers. Some farmers are, I know farmers. Farmers are artists. They're chefs. They do all of these things for their community, right? When you get to sit down with a community of people and you see them as people, you see their authenticity in themselves, rather than what are the numbers for this event that I'm gonna have? What number am I gonna have for this event? How many technical assistants am I gonna do this year? How many farmers do I have to meet a goal, a quota, right? And it's insane, because when you go through that sort of way of thinking, it does the opposite. But when you actually approach a community, approach a person, and you genuinely want to know about them, and you set yourself apart, you decenter yourself from that conversation, and you make it a mutual thing. I want to get to know you about you, Guido. Inherently, you want to get to know about me. And when you talk about me, or when I talk about you, people are gonna want to get to know you. Because I'm gonna be like, Guido's cool, he likes martial arts, and like, you know, with his mate.
It's celebrating uniqueness.
Yeah, he brings his cumbia. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is really what connects people, because you will carry on that voice. You will connect, and I will connect, and our network will grow, versus approaching it as in through the capitalist lens of, first of all, our community doesn't work that way, but approaching it through a capitalist way of just like massive numbers. People are not people. Yes, they are. And you're never going to get, no amount of technology is ever going to get in the way of that. That's how we're biologically made. Connection, the human to one interaction, the need to be seen, the need to be heard is fundamental to any relationship. And so I offer that because that's what's been allowed me to be very successful in building the networks that I have built with farmers, and the relationships that I so am privileged to have every day. It's been my ability to sit down and listen to them and see them as people, as whole people, not just the struggle part, as whole people, their dreams, the things they love, the things they cherish. That's really what brings us close together. What I will say, and I see your hand up, Husina, I don't want to take so much of your time.
Very
What
good.
I will say, and I think it's really important to just point it out, is that when we see that, what I've experienced in my community is when I've done that, when I've created that, when I've fostered that into some people, it is so threatening that I will be made the villain. It is so threatening to see people coming together. It is so threatening to be powerful in that way. It is a disbelief. It is like sort of like a disbelief. And I actually would want to hear Justina and Karen also talk about this, how in disbelief people are of who you are, right? And how there is some support for you, but at the same time, there are folks, women and men. For me, it's been substantially women, to be honest, that come for you in such a malicious way and try to strip the light from you, try to strip your dreams from you. But yeah, anyway, Justina, sorry about that.
No, I love it. I love it so much. And I just wanted to name like what I'm hearing and what I see from all of us, just having talked to you guys before as well. I think what I hear is that there's so much power in being grounded within your own self and being very like doing that work on you to be self-aware, but also to question things. We're working within a structure, right? But we're also trying to not just like mindlessly follow through with that structure and be, you know, do what we're told and this is how you do it, blah blah blah. Like we are creating and navigating and making our own paths outside of culture, outside of societal norms, outside of industry norms, right? Like I think all of us are incredibly creative in the roles that we are in, and that takes a lot of vulnerability, a lot of braveness, a lot of errors. Like I've made so many errors. I still, and I think someone brought it up in the chat, which I just was like, I wanted to call it out. Frederic talked about imposter syndrome and how they said, I help people with their gardens and explain why certain things are happening and how to fix it. And then I realized I might not actually be a full imposter. And I just relate to that so hard. Even when I was introducing myself and I was like, I've, you know, been farming, and I'm like, have I actually been farming? Am I a farmer though? Can I actually call myself a farmer? Like that's what's going on in my head. So I feel it, and I just feel like to name it, like we have done that work and we are doing that work on our own selves and are staying in our own lane and moving forward on that micro level, again back to what Karen said, and here we are on a panel hopefully affecting a little bit of the macro. And so I just think that's really cool, and I love everything that you said. And I also wanted to give Karen an opportunity to talk about I loved your perspective the last time we chatted about tokenism. And I think it goes in alignment with what Josefina was saying about struggle, right? Like getting out of that narrative. Because I could sit here and I could tell you about this person who didn't believe in me, and this person who questioned me, and this person who said that, you know, my family just does it all for me. Like I could tell you all the things that I've been told. It can go on for days and days, right? But like, whatever, like it is what it, like I'm not gonna pay mind to that. I'm not gonna put energy into that. I have before, and sometimes I'll get sucked into it, right? But again, that's not my narrative, that's not my story, that's not what my day is gonna be like. But yeah, Karen, I would love to hand it over to you to talk about that tokenism, because I mean you're a beast in your industry, and I just like yeah, you're amazing. Both of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I love this conversation because there's so many threads you could follow, right? I'm like, you know, and it's a lot of things at the same time. And I feel like you know, just to touch on a little bit about what Josefina was saying, was I think that misogyny and I think that the patriarchy, there are these very there are lines of intrinsic, like it's just so in our like being, and a lot of us don't even know that we, you know, women were coached in capitalist societies and in colonial societies to be misogynistic, period. So we can't even help it. We do it to each other so much. It's like, it's really sad because it's not only in men, it's in women. And so, but yeah, again, changing the lens, just like Justina just said, is for me, like my experience has been as of when George Floyd was murdered, all of a sudden I felt like this, and I don't mean to make it up, and I'm not a victim, but it felt like people would go to my website and just pick the brown person and be like, I want you to speak. And that just was so interesting to me because that feeling of being tokenized, like I could have taken that energy and been like, I'm not going, this is so rude. You know, like I could have gone down that path, but I was like, nope, I'm going to be there because brown people should be there. You know, Latin people should be there. And yeah, that's what I'm fighting for. And here's the door. It just opened. So now I'm gonna go. And so that was interesting to me. It was an interesting seat to sit in because I heard a lot of people around me saying it's not your job to teach. You know, you shouldn't use your energy like that. And I was like, no, this is what I've been advocating for. So here it is. It may not look exactly like how I want it to look, but once I'm in the room and my voice is heard, I have a different perspective. And just like Josefina just talked about, is like all of it is about celebrating uniqueness, how we become community, how we trust each other, how we build trust in each other, has to start with celebrating each other's uniqueness. Being all the same doesn't get us as far, for sure, and we have a long way to go. So we must empower ourselves. We must champion each other's uniqueness, and then be open and willing to share and collaborate that and bridge and weave in that, you know. And as women, you know, there are just some innate things in us that I think are genuinely joyful to create spaces like that, to create that environment, just like setting up a garden bed, right? Just starting the garden bed and going, maybe this plant will grow better with this plant. Maybe we should put, you know, squash and beans together because they've always been together. You know, like that thinking and that preparing the environment, I think, is something generous we can do for each other. And it starts with empowerment and not disempowerment, for sure.
Yeah, also the to add to that, the power of authenticity. One, it's extremely hard to be authentic. I mean, it takes a lot of self-reflection. It takes a lot of self-reflection and a lot of demons you've got to battle. And you're in your own corner, and your coach and the ref. So like it takes a lot to be authentic. I only spoke about it takes a lot to be authentic. It's important to be authentic. Because it also creates more love in the world. And love is so important. People don't talk enough about love, but love is so important, and it needs to come from a place where it's authentic. Because the more authentic we are, the more we love ourselves, the more we appreciate ourselves, and in the appreciation for ourselves, we appreciate the other. It's like the kindness you show yourself is the kindness that you show others, right? And once you really fall in love with yourself, and not you fall in love with yourself and the gifts that you've been given and the personality that you've been given, and that is really where when you can also appreciate the other and the other's contribution. So authenticity is such a powerful thing. And in our work, right, me as a technical service provider, and also but as farmers, from a technical service provider, working in a nonprofit world, it has to stem from love. The work we do, and the more out of touch you are, the more things become about numbers, the more things become about where that is the focal point. Again, it does the opposite, right? You actually serve less in wanting to serve more. It's inauthentic. It's not because it's not coming from a place of love, it's coming from a place of production. And it's a scary thing. Fear is a scary thing in our society, because we are so accustomed to bigger is better, even though that has not actually proven accurately, right? Even though we see the evidence in front of us, right? More food doesn't equal healthier people, or it doesn't equal access to food, right? That was the whole point of the Green Revolution. More shirts doesn't equal fashion, right? more of everything doesn't equal any of that, right? There's a balance to things. And so I'll offer that too, because I know that in the pre-meeting that we had, we also talked about Justina talked a little bit about profit and and authenticity and her values. And so yeah, I don't know, Justina, if you wanna share a little bit about that on your end of like how you see farming.
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely shifted over time, like my definition of success. And there are so many aspects to the farm. So we have a venue, we do agritourism, and then we like wholesale our products, and we have a whole line of value added products as well. So there's a lot that we do to kind of supplement the actual farming of things. And so yeah, it can be really tough to also I kind of just sorry, I wanted to backtrack a little bit about what you were saying about being authentic, and just note to everyone like that it doesn't always feel good. Like sometimes I think we have in our head that like authenticity is like you're gonna feel great, vulnerability, it's gonna feel great, like doing the right thing is gonna feel so good. It doesn't. Like it a lot of the times it's like you're questioning it. You're like, did I do something wrong? You feel like, I know I sometimes feel like, oh my God, I upset this person, or I said this wrong. Because you're kind of like doing something new. I know for the longest time, like I was such a people pleaser. Um, and that's always going to be in me, but I have definitely found my voice a lot more, and can, even if I'm being a brat and even if I'm feeling some type of way, like I'm going to let myself feel that way, and I will come back to it and address it, and trust myself to know that like I lead with love and integrity, and if I mess up, if I stick my foot in my mouth, like I will make it right. So just a note that like I'm like it doesn't always feel all that great, but yeah, but I think as far as like profit and looking at everything from a profit driven way, it's tough, right? Like we have to make a living. So like right now our venue is definitely carrying us through to allow us to have this flexibility, right? So it's kind of planning to also be able to have these parts of your business where you can be creative. So it does require, some planning and some just luck, I think sometimes, and hard work kind of mixed together. I do want to also note that like I think we had in the questions here, Guido, you had put this in there, like how do I incorporate native plants in what I'm doing and still be able to make a living? And I think that's a fantastic question, because it's in order to, at least, and this is a totally in my perspective and my experience, and kind of in alignment with my morals and ethics, when it comes to native plants, we also have to take into consideration the truth of native plants and why there aren't a lot around, right? It's because there was an entire genocide and an entire annihilation of a culture. So to plant native plants to strictly make profit off of them, to me, doesn't sit right. To me, I think you have to hold this one truth of I need to empower these plants and this culture, and either educate people on why there aren't a lot of native plants. Or you could, for example, like maybe get in touch with an indigenous organization and offer them to come harvest or collaborate in some way, right? But you do have to keep in mind that if you were to plant native plants and make a profit off of a plant that is a huge part of someone's culture, who currently in the current system that we live in is not empowered, and who is suffering still within the system, that you kind of need to reflect on that and figure out if that works for you. I think it's a tricky situation. Like for me with the native plants, right now it's all about restoration and it's all about showing people what native plants are. But you can harvest yarrow and poppies. There, I mean, so many of these plants have medicinal benefits, elderberries, so many plants, right? So you could harvest them and you could dry them. Yarrow dries beautifully. There are ways to kind of work around this. Maybe you harvest some and again you offer some to the indigenous community around you, and have them, you know, have the access to that as well. So it's tough. It's tough. I'm still figuring it out. And if people want to email me and kind of brainstorm, or you want to come out to the farm and check it out, please do, because it's something that I'm kind of just figuring out as I go, and trying to do it in a way that I feel is honoring and empowering of the indigenous community.
Yeah, there seems to be a need to do it. You know, I feel like, again, when you think about systems and how things arise or emerge, there needs to be the capacity for it, right? And then, like, it will not act through the logic of the system, but but it still means that the system is ready for that. You know, so there's that. I think that's an interesting question, and I think it ties back to our conversation about the role of women, because it needs to come from the fringes, from right. It needs to
Mm-hmm.
come from like outside of what's been established. And yeah, one thing that this makes me think, and it ties back to some of the things that Josefina was saying before about being authentic, is how, in a sense, and I know we talked about this before, what we consider feminism in mainstream culture has become women becoming more like males, right? So like the rights won by women in America are that now they can exploit too, right? And I feel like, and this is from the perspective of a male, like I said, it's such a missed opportunity, because if I invite you to play a game, like to play my game, I'll know you'll never win, right? And you see, like, I feel like a lot of the frustration that you expressed in the beginning has to do with this, right? Has to be with like, no, you know, like, you play my game too, right? And it feels like the moment calls like for feminism, in the sense that we all become more feminine, in a sense, and that as a male, that doesn't mean that you're less of a man. You're actually more, right? They're not opposites. It's a spectrum, and you become more human by being so. So I wonder if like any of you want to offer your perspective on how do you carry your um, femininity like into your work, and like what does that mean?
Yeah, I can start with that. I know Karen has a lot of great things to say also. She offered that in our previous conversation that I just was like, um, for me, feminism has always been a point of just, um, I want, I want the right to exist, right? Exist who I am, as in who I am, my authentic me. I want to be able to travel without harassment. I want to be able to own property, right? I want to be able to drive. I want basic human rights, the rights of that any person would want, any human being would want. Um, and it has now turned into, from what I've experienced, it's a spectrum of things, but the predominant experiences that I've had has been uh, this shift in power of women uh, telling me what I should be in order to fight the patriarchy and the male gaze, which it's very uncomfortable to me. Because I feel like I'm jumping from one ruling to another. And I'm still actually more controlled by men because we're now actively, again, focusing on struggle rather than existing. We're still focusing on the struggle with men rather than, you'd be like, in resisting the struggle for men, right? Like, dress this way, shave your head. Like, this is such a, shaving your head is such a thing for me because I feel like often when I'm in spaces where I do my hair or I wear lipstick or I wear a skirt, women feel very uncomfortable. Professional women feel very uncomfortable with that. And it's as if I were to shift my entire being and be more masculine in what I'm presenting, it would be more comfortable for them. But to me, that is still centering what they're fighting against, which is the male gaze. You're still centering it. Men are still more important to you. That is why you're fighting, versus you just existing and taking care of yourself. And there's always this clash, right? Because at the same time, I've experienced that those same women also favor men and empower, and they use manipulation or whatever is at their skill and still cater to men in a very superficial way. And so I don't know, I just offer that. I try not to think so much about it anymore because again, I am now living in a space where I'm just caring for myself and the way I am and the way I show up in the world, and I'm also hoping to support that in women that are doing the same thing and supporting their authenticity and supporting the way they want to show up. But I will say that I have my struggles with feminism because it's also hard to voice that out in a space where by me saying that, men often say like, yeah, feminism is trash. No, it's not trash. It's not trash. Like, I now have the right to vote. It's not trash. Like, I have certain things I can do. It's just, I'm not gonna go from being dictated by men ruling to now being dictated by female ruling. I don't want rulers. I want liberation for all of us. So yeah, Karen, I'm interested in
Yeah, no, it's I really truly believe that all beings have masculine energy and feminine energy. The proportions of that are vary between us, but it's worth and worthy of cultivating both, within ourselves. And there's a reason for that. Like there's a reason for those strong suits, if you will. So like in Mayan culture, there are roles, and they're not misogynistic. They really are not. They don't see them that way. They see them as my strong suit is here, and therefore I take care of this part of the house and this part of the farm, and my strong suit is here. This is why I take, my muscles are not made the same as my husband. Just, or I'm going to carry the child because I'm made to make a baby. I'm made to make life. Like it's the house is right here in my uterus, So there are those roles, and there's a value to that. I really don't believe in man bashing or being against men. I think men are fabulous, and there's so much that I'm learning about men in this work. Particularly when I came into this space was only 10-11 years ago. I was in my late 20s. I didn't know much about, I understanding men is, it's going to take a lifetime for me, but lots of listening and lots of paying attention to what matters to them, what's important. I'm in rooms where decisions are made about food in the United States, and it was very male heavy in the beginning, very, very, to the degree that I don't even know if anyone saw me in the room at all. Where I've learned to hone in my feminine energy is speaking when something really matters to me, and that I see a deviation. Like I'm still going to hear injustice, and I'm still going to hear system very, very like the system where we make something and then we want to copy it and replicate it and replicate it, and what's the number and what's the metric so that I can copy this again and I can copy this again. I'm going to hear that. I'm not going to get riled up about that because it's in the space. But when it gets to the point where I have a point to make, I'm always going to raise my hand, and I'm always going to go, hey, here's what, and take it or leave it, but I'm going to use my voice because I know I have a contribution to make here. The response I've received to that is a lot of respect and a lot of support in the sense that people are like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let me consider that. I think in the beginning when I spoke, it was like, no, there's so many men here that will reinforce what I just said, that your thinking doesn't even matter. And now I feel like there's space for my voice because there are more women in this space. I remember just the first few years that I was doing this work that women ranchers were really fighting and advocating for being able to be women ranchers. Like I remember articles about women being like, I can lift what men can lift, and just really advocating for this. And I remember that touched me deeply because I was like, man, like they just want to ranch, like like it's all right, like let them, and yeah, I would say also, like, we innately make life, like we are designed to do so. And I always say this over and over again, and anyone who's ever heard me speak, I've said it every single time, but I'm like, do you know how to make bones and skin? And like you do, right? You do in your innards, because you do that, you make that. But you couldn't put it on a piece of paper for me, like how to do it, right? Like, so we have this innate wisdom. And sometimes we've listened to each other too much. And especially right now with social media and the way we receive information, I'm like, do I need to hear all of this, or should I listen to my inside? I am different. I'm different than a lot of my peers in the sense that I'm like, I'm gonna go live on a lake in Guatemala and not public speak and not put myself out there right now. And that's not the normal way of a trajectory of my career. Like if someone was in my career in America at this point, they would be public speaking everywhere. But I'm like, no, I don't need to use my voice like that. That's not how I use my voice. So, being true to what's true for me, that bringing that level of softness in is my way, to answer your question, is my way of doing this work, and bringing in my femininity is being as still as I can be. And then it's stewardship, right? It's stewardship. It's going, okay, this waterway is going this way, so I'm going to put a rock right here because I need it to turn this way. And like it's a lot of that, rather than like fighting against a system, because I'm not fighting against any system. I am creating the space for regeneration. That's what I'm doing. And so it takes a lot of stewardship, and it is just like a gardener tending to farm. It's every day you show up and you look at, well, do the pigs need food? Who needs food? Is this irrigation system working? Great. Does this lemon tree need me to get the lemons down from it? Great. Like it's stewardship, and that's how I show up to my work. And I feel like, that I feel like it's not super easy. Like I think that there are many times you want to fight and you want to be like, no, this is completely unjust. Are we crazy? But I also think this is work of generations. I don't think that in my lifetime we're gonna get it all done. Like that's not, to me, that's not the design. Like I love trees. If you look at a tree has been here a very, very, very long time. I'm only going to get a limited amount of years. In those years, I'm going to do what I can for my generation so that this work continues. And with all my heart, I hope that this work continues and that we keep regenerating our species and our being. And I feel like having this conversation is brilliant because it is a reminder for everyone. We have everything we need. We just need to cultivate it and practice and practice and practice and keep watering, because that's the only way it's gonna we're going to have new ways of thinking.
I love that. I love what you said about the energy too, because I think in my head, like answering that question can be a little tough because I don't want to assign certain traits to femininity or masculinity because it tends to gender things, which I think if we are saying like some feminine qualities or like compassion and empathy, we are then kind of making it a little bit more inaccessible for men to access those parts of themselves because we are labeling them as feminine. So I just want to name that. And for me, like the feminine energy, I think sometimes I have a hard time connecting with that. And I think the thing that feels more like it resonates with me right now is this energy of like curiosity um and playfulness and just kind of getting creative with it and taking everything out of my head, like you said, the social media, what this person's doing, what I should be doing, what the industry says I should be doing, and staying again. I think it just comes back to like the groundedness, right? Of like staying in your own lane and doing what works for you, because you're then showing this example of like you're free to do this as well. Like you're free to really value your needs because in turn it's not selfish. You're then showing your community that they can also do these things, and it just like starts to be like a trickle effect of it affecting all these other people as well. um yeah, and I just think like feminine, masculine, that can mean whatever it means to you. Like for me, in my experience, what I have seen from femininity is resilience and like just plowing through making it happen, not taking no for an answer, like always knowing there's another way to do something. I see that in my friendships, like the way they go after things. I've seen it in my grandmother and just the way she made a life for herself here. um yeah, but I would say the thing I most resonate with right now is kind of this playfulness and this curiosity. Like when I'm stepping out to the farm, like I'm like, well, I'm gonna do this. And it's like, okay, this might be silly. Like I literally I have a native garden, excuse me, garden next to our barn that I seeded. And I was like, I'm gonna make walkways, I'm gonna do this. And so I was pushing around like a little push mower, like that you do like for your front lawn. And I was thinking to myself, like, people are probably driving by and being like, this lady is using a push mower on like a 6-acre farm. Like she's insane. Like, what is she even doing? Um, and I love what you said about kind of going with this flow, right? Of not holding on too tight. I think we have to really go with these ebbs and flows of life. Like I said, the reason I decided to put in that 2-acre meadow as well, like one of the factors was we have been dealing with Phytophthora nicotiana, which is a root rot in our lavender. And so I kind of had this choice where I was like, and everyone was like, pump it with this fungicide and herbicide, blah, 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 like make it last, profit, this. And I just was like, that's just doesn't feel, it feels like I'm holding on to something that doesn't want to be here anymore. And that's fine. And so in that process of opening myself up to like, okay, like I'm going to let go and I'm going to just see what's next. And that led me to this beautiful, beautiful um, journey that I'm on now with native plants. And it opened up all these doors. And when I took out the lavender, I had no plan. I still don't really have a plan as to like how it's all going to work out, but I've gotten grants and I have not like everything to do with the native plants has kind of come my way. And so it's really beautiful to see that alignment and that kind of sense that you get when you do surrender, and you do trust in yourself that you're going to figure it out, and that even if maybe you won't, and you'll be okay. Like it'll all be okay. And yeah, I guess that's kind of my
Okay,
thoughts on
thank
those
you.
things.
So we are, it's okay if we go a little over, but we're trying to wrap things up over here. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I think it went perfectly, better than I imagined. I wanted to offer something that occurred to me while listening to you, which is you know, as I said in the beginning, I came up with the idea to do this because I was like, we need more female leadership in our food systems, right? And especially from Latina women. So I was like thinking about numbers in the beginning, like you were saying, Josefina, I was like, if we can get all these women and then they're going to be empowered, it's going to be like very linear. But that also made me confused about what my role was here. You know, like in the beginning, I was like, should I just like stay back and not say a thing? And yeah, well, listening to you all, but especially you, Josefina, what came up to me is this realization that, you know, like I said in the beginning, it made me think about my identity. It made me reconsider my identity because, like I said in the beginning, I'm a white male, but I'm also like born and raised in, I'm like a Latino white male. And this, the reason why this made me think about my identity is, you know, I came here probably 10 years ago. I was still young. And like, I definitely have that energy of like, you know, I'm going to go and get it. I'm going to make it in America, whatever. But at the same time, like a lot of things were like confusing to me about how things were, right? And a little like, I don't know, like that. It took me a while to understand this that I'm seeing now, which is I grew up around women like you. And I think this is why I see the value that you bring to the table. I want to have you around and like, you know, and put these conversations out to the world. But at the same time, I'm realizing now that it's an invitation for everyone, you know, not just me, not just like other women like you, or not just me that grew up with women like you. It's no, this is an invitation for everyone to play a role, right, in our food system, and to see how you can become part. Because like I can also see it like, and then this is like probably the other end of the spectrum. How a lot of like young American white males are struggling, and maybe they wouldn't be so much if we could like bring everyone in. And I think this is the spirit that you embodied today, and for that I want to thank you so much. Those are my closing remarks, and if you know the mic is open for a few more minutes if you want to say anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just say my last thing is, you know, I started down this path with soil thinking that I was going to heal the soil, but the soil is actually healing me. There's no two ways about it. That's what's happening. And so it is also about, you know, rematriating our relationship with our earth, and that we're part of it, that we are nature. And, you know, our nonprofit started 11 years ago, but we named it Kiss the Ground after a Rumi poem. And the Rumi poem is called The Red Wagon. And there's an excerpt in it that says, may the beauty that you love be all that you do. There's hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. So it's about reverence, right? And that's what it's always been about for me. And that does, you don't have to be any kind of expert farmer scientist. You don't have to be anything like that to participate in that reverence, because so long as you are standing, you know, and breathing, you're part of this food system. So that's all I want to add. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. All right, I think I'm gonna close this out. I do want to say name this thing that appeared on the chat that I think is interesting before you go. Jed put a quote to Josefina's comment. I forget who originally said it, but I love the quote that the opposite of patriarchy is not matriarchy, it is fraternity. I think that's beautiful, and thank you to Jed for offering it. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Guido.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
I appreciate you all.